August of 2010, I live in Phoenix, and I walk outside of my house. It's 2,000 degrees outside because it's Phoenix in August. And our neighbors across the street, their 9-year-old daughter, Kylie, was crying standing on the end of her driveway. And it was really kind of unexpected situation. Just walked out. I didn't even remember what I was doing. But I'll never forget what happened next. I walk over and, Kylie, what's wrong? And I realize the front door to her house is wide open, and I don't see her parents. I know her dad's at work, but her mom should be there with her little brother. He's a toddler, 2 or 3 years old, and she goes, my brother's dead. What? She goes, Ryan's dead. And she just kept saying this over and over again. And I'm like, it just didn't make sense. So I go in the house, the door's open, and I hear Erin, her mom, is on the phone. She's actually on the phone with 911. And she's holding her 2, 3-year-old son, Ryan, and he looks dead. He isn't dead. He's still alive today. Not to cause you stress in this story. But Ryan had the first of what has been a lifelong battle with epilepsy and seizures. So Ryan had a grand mal seizure for the very first time and was unconscious, just passed out after it was over. And very quickly, our lives of being connected to our friends and their lives were dramatically changed. Ryan spent weeks and at different times, up to a month, at Phoenix Children's Hospital. And it's been this journey of his life. And the other issues that it's caused are just super complex, and some of you can relate to that. You've had those kind of things. Well, also very quickly, they had a huge financial need as a family. Matt and Erin were young parents, and she couldn't work a lot of the times that Ryan was in the hospital or starting to deal with just this new reality. And so our neighborhood, a few of us got together and said, what can we do to help them? And so we did this fundraiser event, invited a bunch of people we knew, and it was a great time. We had a lot of fun, and everybody chipped in some money that we gave to Matt and Erin to help pay for some of the cost of how their life was changed by Ryan's situation. They started, this went on for several years, even after we moved to Flagstaff shortly after that time. And we stayed connected to those friends, even participated in this fundraising event that they do annually. They started a nonprofit called Ryan's Hope. And now Matt and Erin and others, they've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And it just started with a few neighbors chipping in $50, $60, $75. And they take that money that they raise every year, well over $100,000 annually, and they give it to people who have medical bills. All kinds of people over the years have benefited from this. It's a cool thing that God has done. Well, in 2024, about a year and a half ago, we had some issues in our family with our insurance and coverage, and at the same time, wouldn't you know it, our daughter Susanna needs surgery. She needs a knee surgery. It actually isn't like this life-threatening thing, but it's really disruptive to her life, and she needed this surgery, and it just happened in a situation where we didn't have coverage for that. She's about to get married, and she really wants to be able to dance at her wedding, right, and not have this issue with her knee that was causing so much. So we just said, we got to do this. And I don't know if you've ever paid for a surgery that wasn't covered by insurance or any sort of discounts given, but it was tens of thousands of dollars. At the same time that she's getting married a few months later, and we weren't sure how we were going to take care of that. And in our budget, there wasn't that money sitting around waiting to be used. We knew God was going to provide. And one of the things we never really considered, but I think some people would maybe consider it, I don't know about you, is we never looked at the portion of our budget as we were trying to figure out how to pay for this surgery and all the other recovery and pieces of it. We never looked at our giving to the church. We never looked at our giving to missionaries or other organizations that we support as a family as a way to pay this off. It just never crossed our mind. And I guess looking back, we could have thought of that, but we just realized that our challenging circumstance doesn't dictate how we're to give to God's work. We sang this song, The Jesus Way. Well, his way is what he's told us to do with our finances. And so our friends Matt and Aaron and others who have this nonprofit called Ryan's Hope for their son that we were a part of starting 15 years ago in a really small way, heard from a third party, not even from us, that we had this medical bill, we had this set of bills that we didn't have coverage for. Somebody that doesn't know us told them about us. And they're like, oh, we know them. Like, they come hang out at our house. Like, we go on vacation together. And we never mentioned it to them because we didn't think about it. So we got a phone call from Aaron and said, why didn't you tell us? Send us the invoices. And a few weeks later, a significant portion of our bills were paid by Ryan's Hope. Paid a big piece of it. And what we saw in that season, and what our friends and all the people who've benefited from this generosity of this organization see that God provides. That what we experienced is what many of you have experienced as well. I know we're not the only ones, is that in your own stories and in your life, God is trustworthy. But we live in this world of fear. I mean, even right now, the economic news of just all the headlines are about catastrophic things coming our way. Always. But God says trust. And in this world of fear, especially when it comes to our finances, to our security, to our safety, he says to trust him. I want to look at this story in the Old Testament part of our Bible. It's in 1 Kings. If you want to look it up on your phone, we're going to have the verses on the screen or in the sermon notes. And I want to set up the background of what's happening in the story because it's super important to understand. It's a story of Elijah, who's a prophet of God. And it's in this season where the country, the nation of Israel, its leader, the king Ahab, his wife's name's Jezebel. So if you haven't heard of her, you've heard of like the reputation of that name. It comes from this character in the Bible in 1 Kings. And she is a wicked, evil person. And she follows and worships a god named Baal. And so God of the Bible, Yahweh, he's really sick and tired of his people following this Baal. The king and his wife, it's a religion of their neighbors, the Canaanite people. It's not supposed to be the religion of God's people, but they are starting to follow Baal, which is a god to bring rain, to bring prosperity, to bring fertility to your animals, to your flocks, to your family. And one of the ways the Israelites, God's people, were worshiping Baal was sacrificing their own children. You would put them in an oven. It's horrible, and it's archaeological evidence of it exists. You can go see it. And God's like, that's ridiculous. I mean, those are my words. He just said, Baal is supposed to be the God who brings rain. I'm going to stop it from raining for 3 years. When in an agrarian society, that's kind of a big punishment. No crops. People are hungry. People are starving. And then God sends his prophet to this area, and we're going to read this story in just a second. This region of the Canaanite nation is where Jezebel's from. It's where Baal worship started. And God sends Elijah there to do something miraculous. Look at what happens. It says, the word of the Lord came to him, came to Elijah, the prophet of God. Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. This is where Jezebel's from. This is where Baal worship starts. It's his home territory. I've directed a widow there to supply you with food. It's so interesting. God's using this very simple woman. Not the leader, not the rich people in town, a widow who's struggling. You'll see. And so he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink? Simple request, right? As she was going to get it, he called, well, and bring me a piece of bread. He's adding to his order. You see this? And here's what she says. As surely as the Lord your God, she recognizes Elijah follows a different God than the people in her city and her region. I don't have any bread, Only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." Wow. Elijah walks in to this situation. This lady is going to take what little supply she has left. There's a drought. There's no rain. This has been going on for about a year. There's no Flagstaff Family Food Center for her to go get help. And if you're hungry and feel this way, go to there and get food. They'll give it to you. By the way, we have ways to help each other today that didn't exist in this situation. She's going to starve to death. And he says, "Don't be afraid." Could you imagine being that destitute? And some person you never met before says, "Oh, don't be afraid. We got this. Go home. Do as you have said, but first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me." He knows she's about to starve to death, has enough for one more meal for her and her son. And he says, nah, make that for me. Come on, this is audacious, right, guys? Somebody did that to you, you'd smack them in the head. And then make something for yourself and your son. Like, really, Elijah? But he says this. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. This is a God story. It says, "The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." God is using a widow in a foreign land who probably trusts in a God named Baal to show his power. And he just has Elijah as his spokesperson. So she went away and did as Elijah told her. There was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. And he stayed probably another year and a half. When you read the rest of the story in 1 Kings 17, the flour, the jar of flour was not used up. The jug of oil did not run dry. Elijah did not go to Sam's Club and buy the biggest thing of oil they sell, or the 50-pound bag of flour. It was God providing a miracle. I've never seen anything like this. But it happened. God was able to do this. But he used a woman who probably she knew who he was, but didn't follow or worship him to show his power. The portion she gives is all of it because she's showing trust. She's overcoming the fear of literal starvation, something I can't relate to. But I have fear when it comes to my resources, when it comes to, will God provide? Or are we going to trust Baal? I'd love to say that if I was in that situation and a prophet of God, somebody who I knew was connected to God, came and told me to give them the last of what I had, that I would do it. But I don't know. I hope I would do that. I hope I would put my trust in God in that way. I want to be that kind of person. I'm the kind of person that when Jesus says in Matthew 6 in the Sermon on the Mount, he says, I tell you, do not worry about your life. I want to be like that. Don't you? Don't you? I mean, I hope you, or maybe you like worrying. He says, don't worry about what you're going to eat or drink or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothes? See, today we don't actually worry about food and clothes all that much. We worry about other things. We're much more sophisticated than our spiritual ancestors, right? He says, look at the birds of the air. They don't sow or reap or store away in 401ks. I mean, barns. Yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than birds? You are. Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? But Chris, if I don't worry about it, who's gonna fix it? Well, what if this happens? What if? Here's what's interesting about Jesus' statement here at the end of this instruction to us as his followers. We actually know worry makes your life shorter, right? Like we fool ourselves into thinking that we have to pay all this attention to what might happen. And like I said, you and I typically don't have to worry about, are we going to have clothes to wear? We're worrying about, do we have enough put away in our digital barns? Because none of us are farmers here in Flagstaff. It's really just not the economy we live in. We don't have barns full of crops. We don't have fields full of our only assets and animals. We have IRAs and emergency funds and CDs and checking accounts and equity in our home. And this passage is really hard to wrap our mind around, especially in our world today. But I think that the principle Jesus wants his followers to take away is actually found in the verse preceding when he says this. Before he talks about worry, he describes the heart of the problem. He says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and mammon. Now, the NIV translates this word mammon. That parentheses is mine. It's added. That's the word Jesus said. In his local language, he said the word mammon. There's a different word for money that he talks about in many other places in his teachings. He didn't use the word for money. But we don't have a word equivalent in our language to what mammon represents. But he's saying you can't serve mammon and God. And then he gets into the verses about trust and what that looks like. You see what mammon is? It's like it's the whole economic system of the day. And we have an economic system of our day. And what Jesus is saying is you can't trust God's system and the world's system when it comes to your finances, to your economics. And mammon is wealth. It is that equity in our home. It's the money in our investments. It's not just our cash, it's our property. It's the insurance that we can't live without. Me either. Because you have to have it just in case something bad happens, right? And so you put trust there. And if we have enough, then we're good. We feel secure. And Jesus says not to trust the system of our world. It's very similar when we trust mammon. The economic engine and system of our culture and world today is very similar to Elijah's neighbors and contemporaries trusting the god Baal. They're not the same. Baal and Mammon are not the same demonic figure. Don't hear me saying that, but they represent the same spiritual battle. The temptation to trust wealth, to trust prosperity, to trust our abilities to earn and to make money and to provide for ourselves is mammon. And I can trust that, or I can trust God. And Jesus says you can't trust both. You're picking one over the other. Baal is the Old Testament prototypical idol of prosperity and fertility, a God you could see and look at and say, if I do the right things, then that entity is going to bring me rain and harvest and economic security. And we have our own version of that today. And that's what Jesus is describing when he says you can't trust mammon. It is a spiritual situation. And for many of us, we just have to face the reality that we've sacrificed our spiritual fidelity to our King Jesus so that we can put our trust in this economic system of our world. You're like, what? Well, just do this exercise. What's the larger portion of your income go to? God's kingdom being developed and advanced and people knowing Jesus here and around the world? Or your investments for retirement? Your insurance policies to cover what might happen, your emergency funds, which gets the most portion? Just do that math someday. And see, where are you placing your value? Jesus never commands his followers to save at the expense of his kingdom. In fact, over and over again, including this passage, you keep reading it in Matthew 6, he talks about what it looks like to hoard wealth and warns against that. And we'll use Bible verses to justify our hoarding of God's wealth. But there are far more verses that warn against that than they do tell us to save. You can't serve God and mammon is an echo of you can't serve God and Baal. They're incongruent. They don't work together. And we, Christian writers and thinkers, have just taken this picture of mammon. You do a Google image search of the word of mammon, and you're going to see pictures of demons. It's this personification of a false god. And it's a theological warfare against the idolatry that we see in 1 Kings 17 with Baal. And if we're honest, many of us, and I fight this temptation, we are letting the fear that is so prevalent in our world today drive us to make financial decisions out of fear. And God is inviting us into trust. To trust him. To trust that he'll provide. He'll help us overcome our fears. I think some of us, if we're honest, we're able to sit down and like have a conversation over a cup of coffee or something. It would really just come down to we fear what generosity might do to us. We fear the results because they're unknown. Maybe that fear comes from, who God is and his nature. And this narrative that all churches want is to steal your money so that pastors can be rich or churches can do things that aren't necessary. And that's just fear. Does it exist in places? Sure. But that's not every place. And that's not this place. What God is asking of us to return, the portion that he asks you and I to return of our resources that he's given us to take care of, is not going to harm us. That's not his purpose. His purpose is to make our life good. It's not to take from us, it's to give to us a blessing that when we don't trust him, we never receive and don't understand. See, trust requires action, not intention. This is just true in every area of your life. You don't trust people who just tell you they're trustworthy, do you? No, you trust people who show themselves to be trustworthy, right? God's the same way. He requires action for us to show our trust. The widow had to make a meal for Elijah first, and then the miracle of provision happened. You get the order, right? She didn't just go, okay, I intend to make you that loaf of bread, man of God, Elijah, but I really got to take care of me first. I really got to pay off all my debt. I really got to get to this number in the account, and then I can be go first, God. I intend to get there. I've never met the person who wouldn't say, I'm going to stay selfish. No, we all intend to be generous. We just have some things that need to happen first, right? Or am I the only one who gets tripped up here? The widow had to obey. She gave the full portion. She gave everything she had away in the hope and the trust that she had heard God was going to take care of her, and she put her trust in the right place because he did provide. And I don't know where you're at and what level of trust you're in. I don't know your situation. We're all in different places. Probably only you, maybe if you're married, your spouse, know where you're at, what level of trust, and what portion of giving would actually represent trust. It's not the same for all of us because our situations aren't the same, but it does require action. And there's action for each of us to take. What does it look like for you? The actions of trust. To grow, to overcome the fear that is so prevalent today. Each week in this Fearless series, as we're in the middle point of Unfinished, in this initiative of discipleship and generosity, we're sharing stories of people in our church, just people like you, and what God's doing in their life and in their situation. And today's story that I want to share with you Eric and Emily Thomas, and they're very new to our church, and a lot of you can relate to that. And they weren't here a year ago when we started this initiative, but they're here now, and what God's doing in their life and how he's using our church is just an incredible story that I found so encouraging. I want to share it with you. Let's watch this.
My name's Eric, and this is my wife, Emily, and we just moved here about 4 months ago. One of the things that really drew us here was our son really made a huge connection with a group of boys and really took him in immediately and made fast friends.
I came a couple months early for my job, and then when they finished school and sold the house and stuff and came here, I had already come to this church one time, and it was the last day to sign up for the kids for summer camp. And I thought that'd be a great way for him to connect with people, so I signed him up. I didn't know any of these people, but they seemed nice. And so the day that they flew in from Florida, we packed him that night, and the next morning he went to church camp with this church in New Mexico and came back with 5 new best friends and he decided, this is a church for me, Mom. These guys are my best friends.
Our son comes with me in the morning at 8:30 for men's group, and then he's here for all 3 services. And it's just incredible. The group of guys they're solid. They speak into each other's lives. It's really quite a good connection there as well. I really enjoyed those guys. It's been big.
I do like art nights with the girls. There's devotions on the patio. We go hiking. There's a lot of fun things that have helped me make friends since we arrived here. God says that every good gift comes from him. So our ability to make money, our ability to have jobs, anything that we have is from him. So might as well give it back, especially since he says to give. It's an act of obedience.
And to give with the idea that you trust in God to provide for you. So, hey, look, I'm going to give this part that normally people would use to just keep for themselves to live, but to trust in God that he will supply for you.
This place clearly prioritizes connection. And because the patio can only be used certain months of the year, I love the idea of making a large connecting space. We invite people to come to church, and we've had people come visit with us, and they have left connected and loved. And I love that this is a place that we feel comfortable inviting people to come. And I love that the church's heart is to make more gathering spaces.
As we've learned more about the project of Unfinished, right, of doing that, although we currently give, the church wants connection. It's a great place to connect. We will prayerfully ask God, how else can we give to that, to make that happen?
And we've seen how well they've used the spaces that have already been provided, so we know it's going to be used well and frequently, and that's exciting.
It was fun. Our son Porter and all his friends from the middle school group were all sitting on the second row over here last service and just loved seeing themselves in the pictures. Thanks to Eric and Emily and sharing their story. Right now, if you don't have some of these materials, we gave these packet of materials to everybody that was here last week. If you weren't here last week, you lost yours, just raise your hand. They're going to come. And it's important that we all have these things. If you already have them, you don't need another one right now. But I want to talk about a couple things that Eric said that we heard him and Emily's story. And I would just encourage you to do what he said they're going to do. It's just to pray and ask God, what do you want me to do? What does the action of trust look like for each and every one of us? If you look at these materials, or you've seen them in the past that deal with Unfinished, our number one goal is that everyone who's a part of our church would engage with God in this season. And do what Eric said. God, what do you want? How do you want me to participate in making new space and what we were able to do to pay off the corner and invest in missions in South and Latin America? God, what portion of what I have do you want for this? And let me trust you. And then the actions are really just the things that you see on the commitment card, which if you've got one, look at it. If you had one, you got one last week, you're going to see this again. The actions of trust are simply this, because it is action to show trust. It's people that didn't make a commitment before. For some of us, our action, and all of us have one of these three, is our next action to show trust in God. It might be to make a new commitment because you didn't do that before. You weren't here. Like Eric and Emily, so many people have moved or become a part of our church in the last year. It's amazing. And so it's this season to say, God, maybe that's me. I need to make a commitment. I need to take an action step to show my trust in you. For some of us, we made commitments last year, and it's just the action that we need to do to continue trusting is to just continue to finish strong. Maybe to get back on what God had called us to do a year ago when we made our commitments. Some of us, that's where we need to be. That's where we are. And then some of us also have to just consider, God, are you asking me to increase? The goal is engagement. The goal is to find which of these three, a new commitment, finishing what you've decided before, what God told you to do, or to increase that. Maybe he's increased his portion of what he's given you. I don't know. But for all of us, one of these three is our step of showing trust, of putting action to our trust in him, that he will provide. That he'll provide the space we need as a church, but he'll provide what you and I need to live. The widow gave her full portion. She gave away the last of what she had, and God refilled her supply for years to come. Jesus tells another story later in the Gospel of Matthew about a widow who gave all that she had, 2 mites, 2 pennies, the full portion. They displayed irrational trust. And I just want each of us to consider, and what I'm considering in this season is, where is my trust? Is it myself, my ability to work, my investments, my job, my insurance, the equity in my house? Where is my trust? And how can I put more of it into God's hands? Jesus, we know this is hard. You knew it was hard. That's why you talked about this idea of trust in our resources and our money so often. Help us have the courage to trust you. Help us see this world and its system the way you see it. And let us not trust mammon, but Jesus, wholly and fully put our trust in you. Let us take our next action step to your glory and honor as we trust you more today than we did yesterday. Help us do this. Give us your courage through your Holy Spirit, Jesus. Amen.